I can assure you we feel more energized and feel more in the midst of hot and heavy competition than we ever have before at any point in our history. We have people coming in, Sergey Brin has sort of come back into the office and is excited about coding and AI because this is just, as he says, we're now outside the box of traditional computer science.
Welcome to WONK. Artificial intelligence is, of course, both a massive opportunity and a potential threat. And for few companies is that more true than Google. With search, its bread and butter, will AI be its undoing or its future? It's a question Google is confronting, even as it fights rearguard action on its search dominance, with antitrust regulators in the US and Europe claiming it's abused that dominance. In that context, Kent Walker has one of the most high-stakes jobs in corporate America. He's president of global affairs at Google and parent Alphabet. He's also a former assistant U.S. attorney and an exec at a number of other Silicon Valley high flyers, including Netscape, AOL, and eBay. Kent, welcome.
Thanks very much, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I wanted to start with that question of artificial intelligence, because whether it's a threat or an opportunity does seem to be the question we all grapple with. And I say we all, individuals, businesses, governments. For Google, where does that land for you?
Well, we've been working with AI for many years. If you've been using Google Maps or Translate or Search in the last 10, 15 years, you've been using AI. A lot of the transformational changes, the papers that really opened up this field of generative AI came from Google some years ago. So we've been integrating this into our products for some time. The pace has obviously accelerated, and it's a very exciting time. It's important to remember that when we talk about AI, chatbots are 5% of the game. What's really fundamentally important is that this is not just a scientific breakthrough, it's a breakthrough in how we make breakthroughs. And that's going to be remarkably important in material science, in nuclear fusion, in clean water for people around the planet, agricultural productivity, and more. So it's a fascinating time, and we are very much focused on being an AI-first company, as we said some years ago, and making sure we're delivering these benefits as widely as possible.
And of course, we do see, I see when I use Google every single day, 300 times. And that AI summary is often super useful at the top. One of the big questions, Kent, has been what it does to how you monetize search. It's not clear to me, actually, whether it's as big a threat as some people perceive. I'm curious for your take on that, whether this is just a transition Google can make and continue to monetize search the way it always has.
Yeah, this is in many ways an evolution of the algorithms we've been using for many years. And we do see more people being interested in using it. We appreciate, 300 times a day is a lot, but if everybody used it that much, we would be, serving an awful lot more people. We are, so far, the early indicators are that, it's increasing the number of searches that are happening, and that people are still clicking to underlying content when they want to go out and do a deeper dive on different topics. Because the AI summaries are just that. They are summaries at a high level. And the people who click through to see the underlying article or story or information source really are the ones that want to go deeper on those topics. So they're the most interested, the most sort of intensely focused users out there, and really valuable to publishers and others.
You will have seen the angst in the media community about the fact that the search doesn't kind of elevate the page. In other words, it doesn't take you right to that source if people are looking at that summary. To your point, people can click through. The sources are available if you want them. But there is this feeling of real threat that people won't, that a lot of people will just get the answer up front and not click onto that page. And that will cost journalism a lot. What do you say to publishers who worry to you and everybody in the media space who's concerned about this?
No, look, it's clearly a time of evolution in the media industry, and that's been true for the last dozen years in different ways. People are searching for and finding information in different ways. It's our job to partner with publishers to help the whole ecosystem evolve. That's one of the reasons we're proud that we've been involved with the Canadian Journalism Collective to help with that funding mechanism. We have the Global News Initiative, where we are providing traffic and expertise and bringing together groups of publishers to talk about how do you continue to get traffic, how do you turn viewers into subscribers, how do you evolve your business model in this very dynamic new space. We do think that publishers that can add unique value are always going to have an important part to play.
This question of kind of how to partner, because this technology, of course, is the one people want, your technology, while supporting the production of the original content, which I think we can all agree is always going to have value. Google has, I mean, you committed $100 million in Canada to supporting that original content. Are we on the right track? You know, Canada's taken a couple of runs at trying to figure out sort of the new technology and how it marries to the old technology, including, I should say, the digital services tax that we just walked back in response to President Trump. It feels a little bit as though we're sort of floundering around a bit. If you could write the policy for Canada and other Western nations, what would it look like?
Yeah, we're encouraged by the forward-looking approach that Prime Minister Carney and Minister Solomon are taking to AI. There's a new set of responsibilities around AI and digital innovation specifically, investments in infrastructure and the like. We have at Google created an AI Opportunity Fund, an additional $10 million, working with AI safety groups and AI responsibility groups across Canada to help new generations of Canadians learn AI skills. And it's important to say that Canadians themselves are optimistic about this technology. 63% of young Canadians are looking to find AI skills. That optimism is a strategic advantage for Canada. And figuring out how we can turn that optimism into productivity is going to be key. So you ask, what would we recommend? We think there are three pillars here. One, a pro-innovation agenda, making sure we have a regulatory environment that encourages new innovation and deployment of these tools, because it's not just enough to invent, you also have to put them to use. An infrastructure agenda to make sure that we have the energy and the data centers necessary to support that work. And then fundamentally, a workforce agenda. How do we make sure that the next generation, or in fact every generation of Canadians, is picking up these tools? The good news there is that these tools are unique in that they're so easy to use. A hammer doesn't teach you how to hit a nail, but an AI tool will teach you how to ask better prompts. So it tends to upskill the least skilled the most. That's unusual and really promising in terms of making this work for everybody.
One of the things that our new AI minister has said, Minister Solomon, is that we won't, I'm paraphrasing, so I don't want to get it wrong, but my analysis of it is we won't overcorrect on the controls and regulation, that we're going to lean into innovation and trying to adopt this technology and deploy this technology. Of course, there are huge concerns, including from, Jeff Hinton, whom you know very well, about the lack of guardrails on AI. So what's the vision from your point of view of how we do capitalize on it and own it? And Canada has, an opportunity to do that while also not letting the genie out of the bottle.
Yeah, I mean, Canada, as you know, has been a leader in a lot of AI and computer science, both in Montreal and Toronto and throughout the country. So you have a uniquely strong position here. It's absolutely right that we want to have a balanced approach. We at Google talk about being bold and responsible. Both sides of that are equally important. So as a government, you need to think through what is the framework for regulation? How do we deal with the risk factors, but not overcorrect, as you say, at a point where you're not reaping all the remarkable benefits we're going to see. So what are the elements of that? We talk about being focused, aligned, and balanced. Focused means look at the specific issues that are coming up with AI. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Canada already has strong laws around discrimination and fraud and various kinds of abuse. What are the unique challenges that AI poses that need to be addressed? Aligned, how do we make sure that Canada's framework is consistent with other countries around the world? And then balanced, making sure that we understand that in many cases, existing systems are not all that wonderful. Can we better that using AI, as we're already seeing with, say, Waymo cars in the United States, being able to be something between 5 and 10 times safer than human drivers are? So how do we put those sorts of innovations to work in ways that benefit Canada?
One of the things we now know about technology, and we kind of know it in retrospect, this is more of a philosophical question for you, but it does matter what the goal of the tech company is. So we can argue that Google's goal has always been to share information and ultimately connect people with information, but businesses with people, in the reverse. Some tech companies that now dominate our world, and Meta is the one that comes to mind, Instagram particularly, their goal is different, and it feels more like kind of rewiring our brains for dopamine hits of various kinds. And I guess I'm wondering whether you think it makes a difference what the heart of a company's intent is if they're going to unleash AI. In other words, does it matter that OpenAI has one kind of lens on the world, Meta has another, Google has a third? Is there a better way to come at this?
Yeah, sure. I think it's absolutely right that intent and focus matter an awful lot. I mean, our mission statement, as you allude to, has been to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. We're not primarily a social media company. We don't play in some of those areas. But what I can tell you about what our focus has been is really, and this is embodied in our AI principles, coming up with innovations that are really positive for society. Not just for our business. Obviously, we want to have a successful business, but we fundamentally feel as though we succeed when users succeed. And if we can do that right, whether it's individuals at home or Canadian businesses across the country, that's a win for everybody. Now, as you allude to, there are bad actors who may abuse this and rogue states or terrorists or whatever, and we need to have regulatory frameworks around that. And we've all, for many years, have said AI is too important not to regulate and too important not to regulate well. So that's why we want to be at the table and come up with this sort of balanced schema. We're as you might imagine, we're optimists about the opportunity here, but the optimism shouldn't blind you to the fact that you need to have some sort of guardrails. We have thousands of people who are working on building guardrails into these products right now. And the good news is AI is actually proving to be really positive in lots of respects. So a service like YouTube, for example, a few years ago, 1 view in 100 of YouTube violated our policies. Today, it's 1 view in 1,000. That's because we're using AI to recognize these patterns. Cybersecurity, we're using AI through our Google Threat Analysis team, Mandiant, to identify vulnerabilities before the bad guys can find them. So if we can stay ahead and use AI as a tool for good, that's a win for everybody.
Is it too late to regulate, though? I mean, there are, I'm not talking necessarily about rogue states or terrorists, but even capitalist enterprises who are, building AI right now, they've kind of let it loose in the wild, some of them.
Well, it's always a challenge. There's a book from 40 years ago called The Social Control of Technology by Collingridge, and what's known as Collingridge's Dilemma. I'm going to wonk out on you since this is wonk.
Love it.
But Collingridge's Dilemma is it's possible to regulate technology too late when it's locked in, but it's also possible to regulate too early before you really know what's going on. And the art of this is really figuring out that sweet spot. Right? When do you have enough sense of the capabilities of a new technology that you can regulate in a sensible way and not lock in bad regulation will be outmoded quickly? I don't think it's too late. You're seeing various countries, Europe, for example, has gone down a very regulatory path. You're seeing European companies push back on that because they're afraid they're going to be left out of the next AI series of innovations. We'll see where Europe ends up coming out. But if Canada can find an appropriate middle way, that is taking advantage of the good, limiting the bad, understanding that all of these things are trade-offs, that's probably about where you want to land.
We're in an interesting period, Kent, because for a long time, disruptors unseated the incumbents, and we saw that happening. And you're at the table at a company that is one of those examples. So far, the big tech players, and Google's at the forefront of this, seem to be able to innovate their way to their own disruption, which is a careful dance. In Google's case, maybe an evolution. Not sure how far you have to go. But is it different now? Or will there be upstarts we don't quite know yet, or maybe we do, who will unseat the 5 big tech names that dominate the world today?
Yeah, it's a big question, and we can look at the past and say, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Cisco for a while was the biggest company in the world. Then more competition came across in the router space and the back-end space, and Cisco's not as doesn't have as strong a market position as it used to. You look at Google, when mobile phones came along, said, Google's business is over because who's going to want to look at ads on a little tiny phone? Well, it turns out a little tiny phone that you have with you all the time is actually much more valuable in terms of people doing more of the searches we were talking about earlier on. So this is, in a sense, a new chapter. It is probably the biggest chapter. This is a remarkable general-purpose technology. There was a paper a couple of years ago called GPTs or GPTs, Generative Pre-trained Transformers or General-Purpose Technologies. And so we see this broad scientific impact across the economy in different ways. That's a challenge for our business and an opportunity for our business. We are trying to integrate it in natural ways to make our products more valuable. We try not to lead with AI as much. Instead, we just talk about products that work better for you. Google Maps has used AI for years. We don't talk about it as an AI product, even though it has AI built into it. It just helps you get to where you go and avoid the traffic jams more effectively than it used to. So that's our general operating spirit, our design principle. We're trying to come up with tools that are as useful as possible.
One of the biggest files on your desk, of course, are the antitrust cases. And I know they're at various stages, and probably there's less you can say about some than others. In the U.S., sometimes we find that the kind of regulatory action is late, and that the market has changed, even as so it does become a kind of a rear guard action on yesterday's Google. I don't know to the extent to which you feel that's true, because even as people are saying, oh, Google's facing an existential threat from AI, we're saying, well, they have this massive dominance in search, and a monopoly in search. Well, which is it, I guess, is the question. In terms of how all that unfolds, are you optimistic about the path forward on kind of the antitrust file for Google?
I think we will find a way to navigate it. I mean, it is a remarkable moment. Normally you think of a monopoly as sitting back and just collecting monopoly rents. I can assure you we feel more energized and feel more in the midst of hot and heavy competition than we ever have before at any point in our history. We have people coming in. Sergey Brin has sort of come back into the office and is excited about coding and AI because this is just, as he says, we're now outside the box of traditional computer science. And you're seeing new kinds of competition come up. 2/3 of American venture capital money is going into AI startups. We're seeing all of the big companies and many medium-sized companies, the OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity and various others, come onto the scene as sources of information. That's going to make for a very frothy, yeasty competition over the next few years. We think we've got some remarkable tools and some remarkable engineers who are doing great stuff. So we like our chances. But nothing is, a foregone conclusion in this space. And so it does feel a little bit of some of these issues that came up, 5 and 10 years ago are a little bit, in the rearview mirror. And we're mostly focused on how do we, create the next best generation of products. The internet, the old line, competition is a click away. It is remarkable to see how quickly a tool like ChatGPT really came to the forefront. Huge adoption rates, huge awareness of those tools, particularly among the younger generation. So that's a challenge for incumbents who need to match and improve on some of that. And we do think at this point, we have some of the most efficient and effective tools in the world, both at the high end, the most performative AI models, and the most efficient AI models. And both matter because the most efficient means we can get AI into your phone. And the most capable means we can solve some of these cutting-edge scientific problems, working on cures for cancer. We're hoping to have AI-developed drugs come to clinical trials by the end of this year. So this is not a 10-year-off thing. This is very real and coming soon.
And of course, we're all doing it now every day, and the numbers are staggering, right? As you say, the adoption rates. I actually did I use Anthropic, and it has a new research function. And I did a kind of a complex research query a week or so ago. It spent 14 minutes drawing on sources. It was a big topic, but 14 minutes. And I sat there thinking of how many jet planes am I flying right now? I mean, what's the carbon footprint of this search alone? I've kind of felt terrible about it. How do you kind of square that? How are we going to meet the demands? And by that, I mean, just literally, are we going to find enough electricity, let alone the climate damage that comes with finding and supplying it?
So the positive news about this is that these deep research tools, Gemini Deep Research, Anthropic, OpenAI, are really extraordinarily powerful. They do allow you to do more research than before. You would have driven down to the library 3 or 4 times to do all of that research, and that has its own carbon footprint. The other piece is they are helping us make the energy grid more efficient, more effective. We used AI and Google data centers, and we became 35% more efficient as a result, just by routing queries and routing information in different ways. We now have a group called Tapestry that's working on doing similar things for the electricity grid generally, and that hopefully we'll have more breakthroughs in nuclear fission, nuclear fusion at the same time. But we also recognize that there is an increase here. The tools are becoming incredibly more efficient. And this is an amazing number, we are 300 times more efficient than the state of the art just 3 years ago.
Wow.
That is, when we're not 300%, 300 times. And as a result of that, we are driving down you're improving the efficiency, but the demand is going like this. So what are we doing to deal with that? We don't want to just draw on the existing sources. We want to expand the pie. So that's things like starting to do forward-looking purchase agreements for nuclear fusion, small modular reactors. We hope to have some of that power coming online by 2030. We are one of the world's largest consumers of geothermal energy, wind energy, solar energy. We've pushed for permitting reform in the United States to allow us to move these new green sources of energy from where they can be generated, which oftentimes is remote areas, to where they're needed, which oftentimes is highly populated areas. So it's a global challenge, but we think we're in the lead in sustainability and trying to make sure we get that right.
You're in a very complex period in the U.S. in terms of a regulatory environment as well. And partly, I'm going to venture to say it's sort of post-Doge, just sheer layoffs, people that knew what to do. Your former colleagues that are no longer there or have been kind of defrocked in various ways. How does that feel to you right now, trying to do what you're doing, including some of the, you talk about kind of new energy sources and being nimble about things that do require government agencies and bureaucracy and regulators to be nimble with you. Is the manpower there in America right now?
Yeah, I mean, we engage regularly with administrations around the world. We are now a global company, and so we need to make sure we have robust and constructive engagement with governments of all varieties. It's a new era, right? There are really not a lot of AI experts in the world. The field has really exploded in the last 5 years. So we're all in a sense learning together. I think there is enthusiasm in the Trump administration, in the Carney administration, and a lot of European countries, and certainly the Asia-Pacific region, to put AI to work in different ways, to use it to help solve problems, to make government more efficient, to streamline that, as well as to turbocharge economies. So we're hopeful that we're all learning together here, and collectively we can get to the right answers.
You mentioned the investment you made in kind of developing skills in Canada. You said 10 million. I think that's US. I think it's 13 million Canadian. But in terms of the race for talent, is that about getting talent in Canada, or is that just kind of a goodwill effort in helping Canadians adapt to a new reality?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. We recognize there's a social responsibility side to this, and but at the same time, Canada, as you know, has been a tremendous source of AI talent for many years, and many of our leading scientists are Canadian and are doing work in Canada. Mm-hmm. I've worked with Google DeepMind and others on some of these breakthroughs, including healthcare and the like. So there's an awful lot there that we want to sort of continue to cultivate the top computer scientists, et cetera, and have them to contribute to the work we're doing. At the same time, a lot of this work is for folks who might not end up being computer scientists, but may be able to find other kinds of roles, prompt engineers, using vibe coding, where you can basically create a website even though you don't necessarily know the details of coding. There are an awful lot of opportunities there. So much of our work through the Opportunity Fund is geared to communities with high unemployment, or some of the First Nations organizations, or areas that might not be traditional sources of expertise, because we really do want to bring everybody along here.
I mentioned the digital service tax. Canada's walked it back, but it's not gone, in the sense that countries everywhere are trying to figure out how to tax these services that are kind of in the ether. What do you think is the right approach? I say that knowing you're going to give me the Google answer, but what do you think is the answer to that problem?
Sure. For years, we've been a fan of international tax alignment because we get this as an issue. But at the same time, from Google's perspective, we want to be a responsible citizen. So unlike some tech companies, we are incorporated in Canada. We pay tax in Canada on the profits we make there. We think that the biggest benefit we give to Canada, to the tune of something like $60 billion a year in additional economic productivity, is through people's ability to use our tools and our ability to partner with big businesses, small businesses, et cetera. Now, when it comes to taxes, we've been clear that we're not a fan of unilateral tax actions by any government around the world. It's really, this is a shared challenge, and we need to work it out together. And we've been clear with the Canadian government, with U.S. government, et cetera. The good news is that with the DST now off the table, as I understand it, the parties are now coming back to have more engaged conversations about what a robust framework might look like, and obviously we hope that works out in a reasonable way.
And is that aligned with, as far as what other big tech companies think? I mean, I know you don't all behave the same way. You don't all incorporate in the countries where you're active. But do you think there is appetite globally for some kind? To your point, it shouldn't happen piecemeal or bilaterally. But is there some kind of appetite for a global approach to this?
Yeah, it's hard for me to speak on behalf of others because you say they have different views. But I think for many years, we've worked with the OECD and others, and I think there certainly is interest in that, a variety of different tracks and different approaches there. So it's, as you alluded to earlier, it's an unusual time in international trade negotiations. So I think we may need to have the dust settle from this round to see where we are. But maybe toward the end of the year next year, we can sort of pick that back up and see what the prospects look like.
One of the things that has been quite clear in the last year, but even more recently, is that the race for talent in this space has gotten very high stakes, and we see big numbers of kind of people that are willing to pay and poach. And is Google positioned well for that? I mean, do you have what you need? Can you get what you need to stay at the kind of front of the innovation curve the way you want to do here?
Yeah, I mean, we've assembled some remarkable talent from across the world, and we feel very lucky about that. It's sort of a blessing and a curse because it also means that we are one of the most recruited from companies out there. I think we've had something like 2,500 companies started by former Googlers going out in the world, which is, on some level, that's what made Silicon Valley Silicon Valley. It's the ease of being able to go out, start your own company, come back, share information around the water cooler or, at a drink down the street. There's a real value to that. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, even as we fight hard to keep the talent we have, to attract new generation of talent. The value proposition we offer to our engineers and to kids coming out of college or engineering programs is we have the ability to reach people around the world with your innovations. If you're an engineer, what you like nothing more than being able to create a new tool that benefits people around the world. And our platform allows people to do that in a rapid way. And I think we have gotten to a point where we're moving beyond just researching AI. We're actually productizing AI and turning it into meaningful, valuable tools. And again, these scientific breakthroughs, this next generation of breakthrough, which I think, there's no lie in Silicon Valley. We always overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 10. I'm very much thinking that in that 5 to 10 year framework, we're going to be seeing some remarkable things. So the more people who want to come and help us build, the happier we are.
It does feel as though we're in, the exponential part of the curve with AI, and people are now saying, within a year we'll see jobs disappearing because of AI. One of those professions actually is the law. People suggest, legal, accounting. There are these kind of functions that the AI will do better. What's the long-term prospect for managing those functions if we don't have people that know how to do it in the way that somebody with your level of expertise knows how to do it? In other words, you kind of still need senior people, but there won't be any junior jobs, which is a bit of a logical conundrum.
Yeah, well, I think it's right to think that jobs will be affected, jobs will shift over time. Although that's also been the case with a number of other technological changes. 60% of the jobs we have today didn't exist 80 years ago. And so having flexible labor markets that allow people to move and reskill, et cetera, is going to be an important part of this. It is right that we are seeing productivity improvements in lots of different fields. I alluded earlier to YouTube being able to use AI to do content moderation. We're looking at that across Google to avoid scams and frauds and various other things, and just make tools better than they are today. So how does that change jobs? I think on the short term, it clearly means that all of us need to become better users of these tools. AI is not going to take your job. It's someone who uses AI better than you do who might take your job. And so that's a new challenge for all of us. But if we can all become more productive, if we can all become better at what we're doing, if you said to an employer, your employee is now twice as productive as they were, the employer would say, great, can I hire more employees? Because there's more opportunity to expand market. The first couple of years of a new technology typically involve reducing costs because that's the easy thing, right? Do the same thing you're doing, just do it cheaper. Do it using new tools. So you're going to see some of that. There's no question. But the next couple of years are, how do I increase revenues? What new things can I do that I never could have done before without these tools? And that's going to be the interesting part of it, where you need to, have some imagination to think about this new world and what it opens up.
How different is Google 5 or 10 years from now, from the Google you know today?
I probably need to ask Gemini that question. My crystal ball is probably not that good. But I've been at Google almost 20 years now. And the fascinating thing about the company is that we have reinvented ourselves every few years. We went from being a pure search company to a mobile phone company to working in the content space. And now we've talked about ourselves as an AI-first company for the past 5, 6, 7 years now. So I think the next 5 years will be in some ways the most fundamental transformation of the company. But we have an awful lot of tools that people already use. We hope to be able to turbocharge those and make them better. But we can't just reinvent the existing tools. We almost have to reimagine the tools to think about what now becomes possible as a result of having, computation be essentially too cheap to meter, storage too cheap to meter, transmission too cheap to meter. When things become almost free, that's when the magic happens. And so it's incumbent on us to be thinking about what new opportunities does this open up to help people take care of things in their daily lives, get better medical care, have better, you can imagine a reinvention of material science where your car weighs half as much. A battery can store 10 times more energy. Planes can be powered by batteries because they're so much lighter. We're now already using these tools with Environment Canada to predict forest fires, which I know is a huge issue across Canada, but also flood prevention or flood prediction and forecasting. We've seen down in Texas just this last week the tragedy that happens when people don't have warnings of floods coming soon enough. Those are the kinds of breakthroughs that we're most excited about.
Though you talked a lot about the really exciting potential here, there are, of course, some dark sides, not just AI as we know it used badly, but actually AI developing on its own, right? The so-called singularity or any of the other kind of iterations of the most sort of dire prediction people worry about. Where does that factor into your thinking?
We very much take this seriously. We think, it's a question of, how long out is it is a subject of some debate. But as the different tools evolve in different ways, it'll be important to measure their capabilities and build frameworks around them. And I would say we, OpenAI, Anthropic, the leading labs, have published frontier model frameworks to deal with that, to build safeguards as the tools become more capable. So some of this is things like being able to be self-improving, for example. We're already using AI to make better AI chips. We're already using AI to come up with better AI algorithms. So you're already seeing some of this. There's a lot of talk about AGI, general intelligence. I tend to think more about artificial specialized intelligence. If a tool is really good at curing cancer, I don't care whether it writes good poetry or not. So it will be these sort of individual advances in different areas that I think will be the key to most of the scientific progress we're looking at. But at the same time, we have to think about the various risk factors, national security issues, et cetera. Some of these are cybersecurity, making sure that the models themselves are secure. Some of them are built-in guardrails to minimize the chances that people can use them for negative purposes. And some of them are just awareness of what the tool might do on its own, thinking that it's trying to do the right thing. And you say, I want a pizza, and orders 10 pizzas for you rather than the one you really wanted. So how do we deal with what's called the alignment problem, making sure that the tools are really doing what you want? And so that's all a continuing area of research. And again, we have lots of people at the company who are focused on making sure those guardrails are robust.
Where in your kind of the list of concerns is you being forced to dismantle Google in response to antitrust issues, even as you're pivoting to this whole new business and opportunity?
I think going back to the earlier conversation, this is such a remarkably competitive time, and the opportunities created by the intersection of the different tools are dramatic. We can create much more personalized, customized tools. If you say, boy, I would love to have a tool that was trained on my email that allowed me to write better responsive emails. So we can use these tools across the different silos in really valuable ways. The information we get from Google Chrome helps us on their cybersecurity side to keep people safe from spam and frauds and malware and the like. So I'm fairly optimistic that we'll see how all the various cases play out. But the fundamental value proposition of Google has been using all these tools collectively to improve our users, to have them work better for our users. And if you ask users, they are overwhelmingly satisfied with the quality of the tools, 70, 80% approval ratings of the value of the tools Google provides. I think so long as we keep our eye on that North Star and don't fall into a situation where most people find our tools lacking, we'll be fine.
Kent, we got to leave it there. It's great to have you with us.
Amanda, really a pleasure. I look forward to talking again. Take care.
We've been speaking with Kent Walker. Before you go, here are 3 things we think are worth watching this week. Another round in the global game of chicken called the Trump trade policy, with the White House kicking the can to August 1st to enact trade deals or impose higher tariffs, but sending warning letters this week to countries like Japan and South Korea, threatening levies of 25 to 40%. Canada is still at the table, but with new tariffs pending on copper, the trade irritants are alive and well. Closer to home, the federal government departments are being asked to find billions of cuts as the finance minister looks to shave up to 15% from the budgets by fiscal 28-29. Those cuts sure sound deep, but so does the deficit, which the Parliamentary Budget Office has pegged at $46 billion, and that's before a host of new spending initiatives gets priced in. And speaking of pricing, Canada's competition watchdog is taking on the big dog. Amazon's pricing policies are being investigated to ensure they don't force retailers to sell goods at artificially inflated levels. The unironically named Amazon Marketplace Fair Pricing Policy could mean sellers are prohibited from offering a lower price on another site, including their own. It's unclear where this investigation goes, but for sheer viewer enjoyment, we're giving it a 5 out of 5 rating. That's WONK for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.